Hi, Kurt. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you doing? Pleasure to meet you.
Nice meeting you. With Rebel Moon, I think it's very fun and interesting how this movie, especially the second one, kind of gives itself room to breathe a little bit more. And you have a lot of time, spent just on one planet with a lot of the farming, which I think is a very fun thing to do in a movie to just spend time farming for a minute. But what is the challenge for you of like making sure all of the sci-fi elements are there and all these things when you are kind of putting things in like one location for an extended period of time?
I think that's really, it comes down to the design of the movie, certainly the production design and how Zach was really envisioning things. So I think that that's, even in this Veltian world, you're seeing like, you know, the Iraqi or kind of these draft animals are pulling a wagon, but the wagon is hovering, so things like that, you're able to play with the constructs of sci-fi, but still make it grounded and relatable. So yeah, so I think that's where I think it kind of lands. Yeah, it's really Zach looking at things and being I wanted to feel like this. I wanted to sound like this. I want there to be elements that seem familiar, but then you just change something. It could be a lighting or the way the door opens or things that are like, oh, wait a second, that feels like we're in a very modern or futuristic world. Yeah.
Yeah, and I said this to Zach when I interviewed him for the movie not that long ago, but he said in the director's cut it is explained more. But one of the things about this movie that always kind of like hung over my head from the first one, and now it is still kind of looming over me after the second one is you have this character who her whole thing is that she can bring people back to life, and that whatever is dead does not
Mm-hmm.
remain dead. And so then when a character dies or maybe is dead, and we don't really know if they're dead or not, I constantly am like, well, are they gonna come back? Like, is that girl just gonna bring them back? Like, how do you guys though
Yeah.
navigate the stakes of that? Because we don't know what's going to happen, but we do have that information in the back of our heads.
Sure. So, I think so. Are you specifically speaking about the princess and her magical kind
Yeah.
of powers? Yeah. So, um, okay. So, I think that that has been utilized just to see that she has this, um, this kind of very mystical power.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, that it's not something that we're looking to utilize or to overuse. Certainly, the princess's power and or like I'll keep bringing Noble back. Like that's not going to happen. Like I think Noble has served his purpose, and Noble is now dead. I don't think he lived through this last movie. So that's so. But I think that there will always be opportunities. Certainly the princess has. She is very kind of walks that edge of the divine, and she has abilities, but it certainly is not our intention to overuse those things. It's just really to set the foundation that this could happen. And it also happens where it comes at a cost to her. Like it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, she just can't like do it, and there's no like, it doesn't cost her anything. Like it takes something out of her, and so she can't just be like, oh, I gotta save that little ant that got stepped on. Like there's a lot of there's a lot of life force that kind of goes out of her, and she has to kind of mitigate that and calibrate that.
Yeah, because it's like the minute like Ray Fisher died in that first one, I was like, well, that girl brings people back to life. There's no way Ray Fisher is gone.
I know.
I watched this one,
You
I went,
bring Kai back, bring Blood Axe back, bring them all back.
I was like, this
Why do
girl's
people
gotta
have
bring
to
everyone
die in
back.
movies? Yeah.
And I
Well, I
also,
trust me. I'm sure Ray and Charlie would love that. Just
yeah, I was
come
like,
on back.
where's this girl? Where's bring her in? Uh,
I
but I
know.
also, a sci-fi, it's not necessarily a trope, but a sci-fi thing is always kind of like you find the couple or the relationship that you really are rooting for, and it becomes like your connection within this world. And I think, Core and Gunnar have that within this movie. We get to see that relationship grow, and they become that like that sci-fi couple when you guys were working on this and creating it? Were there any like ideas that you guys kind of had, or were you looking at like how sci-fi uses romance to its advantage to kind of make sure that that does come across in a way that sci-fi fans are going to understand?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we're always looking for, if it's sci-fi or certainly Western mythology, I mean, it's no secret that these films were inspired by great movies that came before us, and that could
Mhm.
be it could be the Wild Bunch, or Seven Samurai, Magnificent Seven, Star Wars. All these things have influence because we're human beings who watch these things, get inspired by them, and like, oh, like maybe one day, as a kid, like Star Wars blew my mind, Seven Samurai blew my mind. Like I was like, I want to do that one day. Unfortunately, and Zach is the same way, and probably everyone on that film set, in some ways, if you're a fan of movies and fan of storytelling, and these kind of modern myths, you get taken, on the ride, and there's nothing better than losing yourself in a
Mhm.
character or a story and feeling something. And I think that that's the power of, and also the privilege of what we do, is that we get to try to create these human connections in a place that, like, obviously I've never been developed, I don't know what that's like, so it's my job to try to render this world that seems familiar. I grew up on a farm, and I did harvest wheat as a kid in the Midwest, so like, okay, that seems like I can write to that. But but this is also something that is completely, like, not part of my experience. And I think that the interesting thing is that science fiction and sci-fi really allows you to you know create these human connections through, like, things that are just similar, or maybe otherworldly, but feel like they look completely different, but they feel like home, or they
Mhm.
feel like a relationship, or something that's happened to you in your life. And I think that's really kind of the magic of certainly sci-fi, and certainly kind of this sci-fi fantasy space where Zach, does some of his best work, because there's this almost this magical realism kind of a quality to how he renders things, both visually, how he lenses things, how he lights things, how he kind of paints things out, on the screen. There's something really beautiful about it. Yeah.
And uh, with this movie, I do think, like you were saying, like you pull from things that you know and like things that you've watched when you were a kid. But I think one of my favorite things is like I hate C3PO with a burning passion. I think he's the worst character in all of Star Wars. But then in this movie, I love Jimmy. And so in my mind, I was like, well, that's kind of the C3PO of this movie, but Jimmy rules versus C3PO, who I can't stand.
Right.
Does it ever get that kind of like boiled down to like, well, yeah, this is kind of our this thing, but we have to make it our own because like Jimmy is just my connection to C3PO is he's a robot, but or
Yeah.
a droid.
Yeah.
So
I, that's cool. I like that you're so passionately anti C3PO.
I hate him
But
so much.
so yeah, it's good. It's good. Good to have enemies. So I would say we never, like, the Jimmy character. Really, Zach and I, and yeah, I mean, really, Zach and I talked about it a lot, and then certainly when Shay came on, um, it certainly is not a just like a robot who's just there to have information. I mean, there's a whole kind of backstory and history and lore of the Jimmies and what they are. And then there are, like, certain caste systems within the Jimmies, that are more warrior class and kind of have ethics and codes, and more like the Knights of the Round Table,
Mhm.
and the protectors of the princess, and kind of these very, yeah, very much in the warrior ethos. So, but also then the switch can be turned off, and then they're just like forklifts. Like, now they're kind of literally been, the mother world has said, you know what, you're too good at that. Now you're just going to carry these things around, and you're going to, wash dishes and lift heavy objects, and we're just going to utilize you in a different way. So I think that that is something that we never really approached it as like, okay, we need the Laurel and Hardy like robots to like move through the cinematic space, but we were really looking for like what is this idea of a robot who maybe starts to go against his programming and his, um he has these core values and this code, and he's struggling with that. And like, he's been programmed not to pick up a weapon, but now he's having a feeling and he's becoming sentient, and he's going to save Sam in the longhouse or in the granary in the first movie, or he's going to like, go off into the woods and like find himself on some, Veltian retreat. And, and then he's going to come down and see that these people are in danger, and he's going to use his kind of, you know, dormant skills to, fight in a battle. So I think, yeah, I love Jimmy. You're not the only person who said this. Like, you know, I think that there's so much opportunity for that one Jimmy, and
Mhm.
also Jimmy is just, there are more of them out there in the universe. Like Zach and I have talked about, this idea, and really just creating, yeah, I mean, like, it's not just one Jimmy. There are Jimmys is kind of like, there's a whole culture and class of Jimmys that are out there waiting to, you know, come do some good in
Yeah.
in the Rebel Moon universe, I guess. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I love the Jimmies. I cannot wait. But for my last question, I think, with the first movie, especially because I was told explicitly when I was in my interview, I didn't call it this, but uh
Yes.
Stas was like, it's not a hippogriff. It's like, okay. Like but you guys
Stas
get
would
kind
tell
of
you that. Yeah.
he was like, it's not a hippogriff. But you guys get to kind of come up with your own language for a lot of these creatures and animals that, like, yes, like they could be coming from mythology, but you are making them your own. What was the most fun you had within creating that world and creating these beings that you got to like name something that you were like, I don't know why I named it this, but it was very fun to me at the time to call them this.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like even from the first movie, the Hamada character, the Jenna Malone character,
Mhm.
I start, and this is an interesting thing, which, quickly, like, I took the first pass at that, and it was like, and it's really, okay, how are we introducing Nemesis in the alleyway? Great. A child has been captured, and it was literally like Alien. Like, there's an alien who's grabbed a child, and Nemesis has to face the alien. And then I did a couple drafts, and Zach was like, wouldn't it be cool if like the alien was like kind of like a centaur, but like half woman, half spider? I'm like, okay, that's cool. And like, so then it became that. And then like as the drafts went through, Zach was like, wouldn't it be cool like if she's holding the baby and like maybe she's mad and she like, you know, the Harmata character like eats children. Like, wouldn't that be crazy? I'm like, Jesus, okay, yeah, so, all right. So and so, and then ended up like I ended up handing that scene off to Shay. Then Shay did a bunch of passes on it, and then Zach did the final, tweak where it was really this conversation between Nemesis and Harmata, like, are as two mothers, and so I think that would be one example of like, you can create this, like, it's literally starts just as like, okay, an alien, and Nemesis has to fight an alien
Mhm.
in an alleyway. And
Mhm.
then the layers as you go on, everybody's putting their little kind of calibration on a character, and then it becomes, oh, this really like scary, spidery thing that, maybe abducts children, and you're like, that's a scary thing, like, I don't want to look at that, like, kill that thing. So I think that's, that would be one thing. And of course, like the Bennu or the Griffin or like that, that was really, yeah, I mean, we talked about that, and we knew it was going to be some kind of winged creature, and I named it a Bennu, and just, I mean, everybody just kind of put their little piece to it. And I was just thinking like, oh, that'd be a cool name for a creature. Like, why not Bennu? And and so, yeah, I mean, it's fun. the great thing about not having to step into a universe and like play by their rules is that when creating your universe, you can use your imagination and just go full throttle. And I think the beautiful thing about that is that Zach has always supported me in my process. I'm able to support him in his process. And as importantly, Netflix has been completely just open armed when it comes to supporting Zach and saying, okay, let's create an entirely new universe and lay a foundation for a story that hopefully can be many, many movies. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the director's cuts and to get back into this and see the future of Rebel Moon. But thank you so much for talking with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great one. Bye.
All right. Bye bye.